we originally talked about the photo that I posted on the website, and how that kind of stirred up some different emotions as far as recollections and naps in a nice quiet porch and breeze, and you just are instantly drawn back to that era and that time when things were quieter, and porches were, you know, a place where everybody gathered. Everybody be on the porch down the street, you know, they'd be out and people walking by, and it's just different now. I think it's coming back a little bit, but you certainly, with all the pieces that you have here, have the elements that everybody's going to identify with something. Swing or just a chair, steps, which I'm kind of drawn to, sitting on steps. Always like nice big wide steps.
Like a stoop.
Stoop.
Which is another interesting space.
And I was thinking about my first bike ride. It happened just off the corner of the porch. We had a porch very similar to this, about the same size, and it was just a little bit of a grade just off the corner of the porch. My father had taken the training wheels off my bicycle, and that's where I learned to ride my bike, and I associate that with the porch because the bicycle, when I was 4 or 5, my father had recycled an old bicycle, painted it, taken the training wheels off, and put a banana seat, high-rise handlebars on it, and it was on the front porch. And I think because I knew my father did it himself, it just held different meaning than somebody just buying you a brand new bike. But I was thinking about that this morning when I was on my way up here. That was probably my first recollection of a porch, and we had an old rocking horse. It was huge. I believe it was about the size of the couch here. It seemed I was little, but it was at least a couple sizes bigger than the plastic ones that they have now.
Right.
I don't know what happened to it. I wish I did.
Was it wooden or was it metal?
It was wooden. It was wooden. It had these huge springs on it. It probably had real horsehair. I've seen them before. They're probably worth a fortune. I don't know what happened to it. I hope it. I'm going to say that it got saved somewhere, and it's
still rocking somewhere.
Somebody's antique shop, but it was gray, and it had, I'm thinking like a formed saddle on it. But it was big enough that you really felt like you were, wasn't a toy.
Yeah.
I'd give anything to see one of them today.
I'm trying to think. I think I've seen one somewhere.
Oh,
my cousin had one of those, and it used to be, can I ride the horse?
You just, you know, there's people that make them now. I've seen them at different venues. They're pretty expensive, but I can't imagine. They're heirlooms, and I'm sure that anybody has put the money into them is glad they have them.
Yeah, they should be handed down. But hopefully that horse is sitting on somebody else's porch somewhere.
Yeah, we'll go that way.
It's actually being ridden by, you know, growing family.
But
kids.
That was growing up in a small village where there was no sidewalks where I lived. There was just a beaten dirt path. And it's probably a lot of that even around here, where, you know, they didn't have sidewalks. It was just the path.
Right.
Just heavily packed dirt, and my other grandparents had they lived in Saratoga Springs, just down from the track, and in August they used to rent to they had a tenant that would rent a room for the month, and of course it was right off the entrance to the track, so in August it was busy. People would park along the side, both sides, and they still do. So the streets would be lined with cars. Everybody would be on the porch. Everybody would gather before the track, after the track. Um, and it was just a nice, the weather is really nice in August, and they had a huge vine, which I believe you,
I think it's called Dutchman's pipe because I've been told that. The reason people that first came from Lucille Macron, who is a fantastic quilter and makes wonderful quilts from applique and all sorts of things. And she was talking about a porch with these huge big leaves. And then everyone was saying, well, that must be Dutchman's pipe. And then we thought about, how would I get a Dutchman's pipe growing up?
Well, it survives
a travelling
today.
porch.
We could probably sneak it out of there in the dead of the night.
Does it grow in pots? We could make a great big planter that sits on the end of the porch.
Well, I'm sure this was mature, and that was in the 50s, and the plant still survives today. My grandfather used to trim it back every year, and then he would tie it up very gently. He was really, he must have researched it because he did a good job with it.
Yeah.
And it was very thick and well taken care of, and that's probably why it survives today. But
so how often do you go past that porch?
Whenever I can. I know the family that bought the house,
oh, wow.
So at least I know that it's a young family. When my grandfather died, I would have liked to have bought the house, but at the time I didn't have the resources to do that. But it was a young family, so knowing that there's kids in there now,
yeah.
in a house that hadn't had kids in a long time. And it had a back porch,
oh, wow.
So when the weather that was more enclosed. But the front porch was definitely the August place to be. I'd be glad to show you that porch someday.
Yeah.
You get to Saratoga.
Well, I'm looking forward to that trip and seeing how people respond to porch pieces.
I think it'll be
on Broadway.
in that area because there is so many porches, and there used to be when I grew up in the 60s and 70s in Saratoga. There was huge hotels. I mean, at that time they were in their decline, but they were porches that were, it seemed like a block long because
right.
These huge hotels and rocking chairs just lined up. So I mean that was a big part of Saratoga's history too.
Yeah, because they come for the springs, right? Like it's well-being and health. And
they would have trainloads of people come up from the city in the summer and use the mineral baths, and so they filled all those hotels. And, it was in decline in the late 60s and early 70s, and they tore a lot of them down. But I think even some of that's coming back.
It'd be interesting to taste the waters on the porch. We get lots of facial expressions as everyone goes, bah!
Anybody that's not familiar with it, it's a different experience. But the mineral baths themselves were rejuvenating. So you come in this beautiful spot out of the city, and that's what you did in the evening. Everybody was sitting on the porches.
Fantastic.
And you didn't have to be entertained. You made your own.
Yeah, making your own entertainment through conversation.